Thanks for joining us on Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
And I'm Rose Mackey, and we're both private practice social workers here in New South Wales, Australia, working in the fields of child protection, out-of-home care and trauma. And today we're recording this episode on Darawal land.
Today we're going to talk about critical reflection in social work practice. So in the previous few episodes, we've really narrowed our scope by focusing on parent capacity assessments and carer and kinship assessments. But today we're going to go wide again by considering a topic that's relatable to all social work practice. As always, we'd love you to follow our podcast and connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. We also have our new YouTube channel as well, which you can find a link to that in the show notes. Your questions and comments are always welcome. Please send us. We would love to hear any little practice story you have, any questions, any comments. Send them our way. Feel free to email us, or as I said before, send them to any of the other places. Our email is relationalpractice01@gmail.com.
Yeah, or even a comment on Instagram or Facebook. We'll take your words any way they can reach us.
That's very true. We will. All right, so critical reflection. I feel like it's a really scary topic.
I think it's the word critical because I'm super good at being critical about myself.
Yeah.
Critical of others at times too.
That's true.
But the critical of the self is not critical reflection.
Yeah.
And I think it's the word critical because you go, ooh, what do we mean by critical reflection?
And do you think maybe when we're applying it to social work practice, I think there's lots of different terminologies or lots of different definitions about critical reflection in particular. But just, I agree with you. It's that word critical, isn't it?
It is the word. And I wonder how, I think we said this in our early episodes too, how sometimes I feel there's this fakeness around social work practice and the way we kind of present it to the world or each other at times.
Yeah.
And I think some of that inhibits us from actually being able to express how we have critically reflected either on ourselves or our practice or even others' practice. And it's not about being an asshole or, being rude. It's just about having the space, I guess, and the professionalism amongst us to be able to say when we think practice wasn't ideal or could have been enhanced this way. But I feel like instead we have sometimes this Pollyanna, oh, it's all so great. And you're so great and I'm so great and it's all so good.
Yeah.
When it's not always that good or that great.
Well, and you don't actually want it to always be great because how do you learn? Which is what we're going to talk about when we talk about critical reflection in relation to practice. So reflecting on practice or reflecting in practice. But I really like what you said before because I think this false view sometimes of what practice looks like or could look like, I think kind of stems from kind of academia, doesn't it? Like it stems from university, and there's this kind of story or this narrative given to students about what social work actually is. And I don't think that's always true. And I know it's not always true. And I don't think it's helpful.
It's not helpful. And then I think it's propelled or perpetuated by larger organizations when they have to print, or do they have to? I don't know. Print this glossy end of financial year, wrap up of all the good work they've done. And sometimes I think that's where it's propelled to, like these beautiful pictures and quotes from people about how amazing the service was. And it all looks so lovely. And it probably was. There probably were pockets of really great best practice, but there's a whole lot of mess and unintended casework, social work practice, counselling practice that has occurred that we don't ever talk about, and we don't probably share the critical reflections of it. That was terrible, or this could have been enhanced if, or I learned this, but I learned it through this really shitty practice that I was involved in.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess one of the things I really wanted to just touch on is how that kind of that hiding of true practice and how it really is perpetuated. How can I say that word?
You just said it.
Did I? I'm going to get rid of that bit. How how this kind of shiny practice is
Promoted.
Such a good word, by actually the use of language. Do you know what? Like, for when I was kind of thinking about what are we going to talk about today in terms of critical reflection, and I actually did some homework on it because I was feeling a little scared about the topic. I was like, oh, I feel a bit scared to do this one. So I looked at what some other social work podcasts were doing. So I specifically searched for critical social work podcasts, but were talking about critical reflection. And there was a couple in particular that I found I honestly felt like I needed a dictionary to understand what they were saying. The language they used to describe practice was so over the top, overly complex, so jargonistic. And I thought to myself, what is this? What is this all about? Why are we actually hiding behind
words?
Such ridiculous language like this.
Can you give me an example?
You know, I did write down an example, Rose, because I knew you would ask that. So I was listening to this one and I didn't even get all the way through it because I was just so cranky. It makes me cranky. But I was listening to it and this person said, and maybe this is the way this person speaks all the time, I don't know. But she's telling this story about, social work education, actually, and what it was like for her to kind of learn when she was a student.
To learn to be a social worker.
And the phrase she used was, education for her felt like she was finding spaces of consciousness raising.
Finding spaces of consciousness rising or raising? Rising.
Raising.
I don't know what that means.
What does it actually mean? Like, what does that mean?
Spaces.
In terms of social work education?
I actually don't know what that means.
Like, I was sitting there thinking, is there something wrong with me?
And this is where I think about the critical reflection, right? I think some social workers use language as a way to further widen the gap.
Yes.
And it's almost like a class system in social workers, like the academics of the social work practice and where you sit. And sometimes I think we use language very purposefully to widen the gap between practitioners and academia, or sometimes I think it's between practitioners who maybe are very theoretically based and are very articulate, but can hide their practice behind that.
Yes.
And then I think when I'm critically reflecting, is it because my vocab isn't that big, that wide, that large? Is it because I didn't talk until I was 5.5 and I still stumble over pronouncing words and I'm just not that smart? So am I being a bit, shirty of others because they've got this great vocab? And then I think, well, what about all of our clients? And imagine taking that language into our clients' homes or our clients' spaces.
But this is what I constantly think about. I actually think when you use overly complex jargonistic language, I agree completely with you. I think it's about separation, and it's about making you sound and feel like the expert rather than over at the expense of somebody else.
Yes.
And I think it has to be like that. Like, I think if you're going to choose to use a ridiculous words like finding spaces of consciousness raising, do you know what I mean? If you're choosing to use that language, then it is a choice, and it's a very definite choice. And it is about, I think, it's about trying to oppress other people. It's about making you seem like you are this amazing academic person who actually has this, like you said, huge vocabulary. And that if you don't speak this way, then there's obviously something wrong with you.
Yeah. And I just wonder how that does translate. And I think yesterday I was on a phone call to a client who, is going through a whole lot of ambiguous loss at the moment and has suffered a recent trauma this year and is transitioning also into older life. And so is having a real shit time of life. And he's made some decisions about his life, which is he has every right to make decisions. And I would say he's made some informed decisions because before he did, I said, here's all the things I can see that are going to be obstacles and huge challenges for you should you make the decision to discharge from hospital before we're quite ready and home's quite ready. Nevertheless, he has, choice, and he made the choice to discharge early from hospital and discharge to a place that wasn't quite set up for him, and had huge issues over the weekend around his mobility and getting things done. I can understand his level of frustration. I absolutely have compassion for what he must have been going through. But he was getting very aggressive and very curtain short with me over the phone and demanding. And he actually became quite verbally abusive. And I said to him, hey, listen, don't get shirty with me. We had many discussions, and all of these challenges and obstacles we spoke about. We wrote a list of cons. We wrote a list of all the things that could go wrong before you left hospital. And this is everything that was on the list. So I understand your frustration, but don't get shirty with me.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Had I have said to him some language that wasn't, relatable to him, how might that have gone differently? And I was thinking in the moment, I was very calm, and I wasn't outside of my window of tolerance. I wasn't matching his aggression by any way.
No.
But I'd listened to a point, and I could understand his frustration. But when it was that verbal abuse, I was like, a boundary. I need to enforce a boundary here.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in. Could I have picked my language better when I said don't get shirty with me? Absolutely. But for that client, it was the best language that he could understand and respond to. How does someone who's raising consciousness something gonna help a man with all of those things happening in his life actually be like, let's take a breath. This is not about, blaming others. How do we problem solve? And what I was trying to do and what I was able to do is get to the end of the phone call by problem solving what we could, and him understanding the other things that were bigger than yesterday. We knew were bigger than yesterday, and the team's working on them, but it's not going to happen immediately because social workers are not miracle workers.
So it kind of sounds like you picked the right word. Using the word shirty was probably the right word to use.
Well, I've heard him use it before too, and I've heard him say to people in his life, don't you get shirty with me.
Which is why you use that word.
So I used it because it's how he's responded to people who have, been a bit short with him. I wouldn't say verbally aggressive to him, but I just needed to use the language that matched. If we're walking around hiding behind really big, large words that actually make you think, what are you trying to say? How does that translate in practice?
I feel like it's the opposite, actually, the opposite of the core beliefs of social work. Like if you think about the core beliefs of social work, which should be about empowering people, it should be about promoting individual dignity, and it should be about promoting social justice. Really, that's what the core beliefs of social work are. I'm sure there's lots of other language, but for me, that's what I think social work's about. But I think if you're using language that actually means that the person on the other side actually thinks, I have no idea what you're saying, therefore there must be something wrong with me, which is the way I felt when I was listening to those podcasts. I'm thinking there's clearly something wrong with me because other people must get this, but I feel like this is taking a lot of energy for me just to understand what you're saying. Then I think if you're using that language and I go intentionally, because we've talked about the fact that we think it's intentional to use such a complex vocabulary, then I think you're doing that for a reason. And that reason is obviously to make yourself feel better.
Yep, or it could be armor,
Oh, you're nice. So you go to that kind of self-protection. For me, I just think it's some kind of manipulation.
Well, I mean, we talk about having multiple hypotheses.
It's true.
And that's just what that is, you've got it could be armor, but I don't know where it sits in social work practice, having that use of language that actually is a choice, and it divides people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it should be in social work practice.
No.
And I think if you come across any good practitioner, and I'm talking about good practitioners, who are really empowering workers who actually understand ground level concerns, then I don't think they would use that language.
Well, I don't think I've seen anyone use language like that with clients in the field in meetings, like good practitioners.
I think they would know I think they would know when to actually use different vocabulary, when to use different words.
Yeah.
But I think if they were actually working with people or advocating for people, that wouldn't be the language they would use. What are you thinking?
I don't think they would be successful if they use that language.
No.
Because
No.
people would be too busy thinking, what did you just say? Like, you lose the meaning, don't you?
Yeah, you lose the meaning. You project a message onto somebody else that they're going to interpret probably in a negative way.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it's that there's no point. I used to say this when I was a lecturer. There's no point me knowing stuff if I don't know how to get that stuff to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
This has to be about shared knowledge and shared learning. And I think that's where critical reflection comes into play, because it's about promoting shared knowledge and shared learning and a shared understanding. Even though we bring our own perceptions of that understanding, because we're individual people and we bring our own stuff to how we make sense of stuff, there still has to be a shared element.
Yeah, I agree. And I really like how you framed that. Because using language that is difficult to understand or interpret isn't about a journey and people sharing.
No.
At all. So I really like critical reflection is that shared learning and that shared journey. And if you can't share it, which means you can't articulate it, you can't impart your knowledge in a way that other people can understand, respond to, and make sense of for themselves.
Yeah.
Then what are you doing?
Do you know what I think? I think the issue is, listen to me, the issue is, like, I'm going to just talk for everyone now. What was I just saying?
My
about
issue is
the learning, the shared journey. But I feel like it's just a kind of a product of our times. Do you know what I mean? And if we think social work is always socially constructed, and if we're now in this kind of area of professional development or practice or whatever, where people feel like they need to use such complex jargonistic language to promote themselves in a certain way, therefore promote the profession in a certain way, and we think that's just hiding. I think that's just hiding, and that's just kind of being, intentionally divisive. Then I feel like that's a reflection of society.
It's probably a really valid point.
Like, I think society, oh my God, I feel like I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyway. I think there's such a focus on self-promotion in society and actually presenting, you said it, I think, at the beginning of when we started recording, presenting yourself in a certain way that's about, look how good I am, or the bells and whistles attached to me.
Yeah.
That I think people have become so accustomed to only hearing those who use a lot of words to say very little. But if you think about the words they do use, they're either really confusing or they're all I statements.
Yes. Yes. And it reminds me when we used to work at the same place, and we used to be curious around the people that could talk the talk.
Yeah.
And they sounded amazing, and they used global statements, they used the jargon, they made it in this beautiful package.
Yeah.
And people would be hooked on what they were saying. But we were like, well, can you walk the walk? And we'd go into the field with those practitioners, and you'd be like, please be quiet. Like, I will talk, because you're just inflaming or, pouring gasoline on an already well-lit fire. Like, please don't talk to this client. Do you remember?
Oh, God, do you know what I remember? And this is what I was thinking about when you just said that. I'm a little bit off topic. But I remember going into the field with this. I was a caseworker. They were a caseworker, but they were someone who really did like to use language, even back then. And I remember saying to this person, let's not tell Dad I was the one who removed his child. We're meeting this dad in a train station. Let's just get him to the office and then we can have a conversation with him there. Sure. We go, we meet this father at a train station. She clearly shit herself, because the first thing out of her mouth was, this is Jody, she removed your child. I honestly thought I was going to get smacked down then and there in the train station. And I remember looking at her thinking, you talk a big chat about yourself and how good you are, and yet you clearly panicked and threw me under the bus.
Yeah. Self-preservation,
Yeah.
nervous energy,
Yeah.
can't follow the plan, couldn't be in
Yeah.
the moment and be,
Yeah.
just relational and
Yeah.
have enough of a conversation to get this dad to an office to then
Yeah.
have a different conversation.
Yeah.
All of those, they called micro skills, have just not been on display. But let me just push you right in front of this oncoming train.
Absolutely. And that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
I mean, Dad knew his child was removed. That's why he was catching a train down. He didn't need to know right then and there that I was the person that did it.
I mean, how, and then you wonder, that caseworker, obviously not reflexive. They're not reflecting in the moment of, oh my gosh, I need to repair this and let me fix this. But when they later went home or went to supervision or whatever the next week, do you reckon they ever critically reflected on their actual actions in practice on that day?
God, no. God, no. Because when it was all done and dusted, and I went to this person and said, why did you do that? Why did you do that? I honestly could have been physically harmed. And they were still actively in self-preservation, and it was just justifying, really. And then it was just kind of external justification. And for me, then I was like, all right, well, you're on my list. For me, I was like, you're on my list. I'm not working with you again.
Whereas you sounds like you approached that in a really respectful, professional way. I'm not sure I would have probably had the same tact, but kudos to you. But I do also think that's where you need a critical friend in social work, not someone that's just going to agree with you and be like,
yeah,
or a supervisor that's like, yes, you're great, you're amazing, this is great, great, great.
Yeah.
Someone that actually asks questions. Like, I used to say to a few of my staff members, if I was watching you on TV in your practice, what would I see? What would I feel? What would I hear?
Yeah.
And what have I missed?
Love that. That's good.
And sometimes people would be like, get their backs right up. Like, oh, I'm telling you, this is the outcome, and like it's all done, and like the intervention's closed, or I've achieved whatever. Amazing. But I'm not there, so I want to watch you on TV. What am I seeing? What am I feeling? Like, walk me through it, because I want to know about your practice. And I was trying to use that as a way to spark some really deep critical reflection. What was missing? What did I miss, and what did you miss? And how's everyone feeling in this screen that we're watching on TV? Like, tell me about the emotions too. Like, you have to come at it from so many angles, not just be in self-preservation defensive mode and be like, I'll justify why I threw you in front of the train.
I mean, yeah, God. I mean, it's really Kolb, really. You're kind of talking about Kolb's experiential learning model, aren't you?
Yeah.
This kind of not just what happened, but how did it feel about? How do you feel about what happened? How do other people feel about what happened? Because that allows you to kind of get to really be critical in the narrative.
Yeah, it's the whole experience. It's not just the outcome, or it's not just what am I moving to next.
Yeah.
It's the actual experience, but it's the experience of everyone. And what part did you, as an active, participant in this, what did you play as a social worker?
I love that. Because I think that's easy for people to remember as well.
So easy.
If I was on TV, what would I be looking at?
Yeah. And I sometimes think, there's heaps of my practice that I wouldn't want anyone to be filming or showing the world.
Yes.
Messy as, put my foot in it, said the wrong thing, miscues, wasn't reflexive enough, wasn't able to build rapport. Heaps of practice that I wouldn't want anyone to be seeing on TV. But they're the practices that you've got to take to your critical friend or your supervisor and have critical reflection on, because as you said earlier, that's how we learn.
It is how we learn. We have to learn by mistakes, and we have to... I think, get better. Here I am making global statements again, like I'm, like the queen. But we have to get better at allowing people to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And not jumping or feeling like you have to hide because you've done something wrong.
And this practice isn't going to be in this glossy magazine at the end of the financial year highlighting, the best practice of the organisation.
I can't tell you how much I hated doing those things. Every organisation I've worked at, this is why I now work for myself, and they're like, oh, we need a feel-good story, or, blah, blah, blah wants feel-good stories. And honestly, truly, what a waste of time. Because you're right, it was never about the actual the feel-good story was never about something that actually should have been a feel-good story, which was something like, this child is stable, whereas they've been so unstable and chaotic, but right now they're doing really well. Let's all celebrate that. That's what a feel-good story should be.
Doesn't translate to glossy print though, does it?
No, it doesn't. All right, let's get back on track in terms of critical reflection. We haven't really been off track.
No, we're critically reflecting on social work practice, I think.
True. I just feel a bit like, I don't know, bossy, blah, blah. You know how you always say I'm a bit bossy?
Yeah, but you're bossy to me. You're not bossy in social work practice.
I just feel a bit bossy.
You're knowledgeable.
No, I feel a bit bossy. When I was listening to those podcasts, I didn't feel knowledgeable. I honestly felt I felt like did something happen to me overnight because I can no longer understand this stuff.
What do you mean?
That's how I felt when I was listening to some of those podcasts.
But that's because that was intentional on their behalf.
Honestly, I was like, that's not okay.
Well,
yeah.
And isn't that interesting? That's the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the outcome as someone who has a doctorate of social work.
Well, I truly felt like a complete dumbass.
I
was listening, I was thinking, I don't know what you're saying. Of course, then I could focus and actually pull it out. But I was like, why should I have to work that so hard? Yeah, that's right.
You shouldn't have to work that hard to understand what people are saying in our profession when we have this shared knowledge and this shared language.
I guess,
we should have.
I mean, not all the podcasts are like ours. Unstructured, a little chaotic.
A little too honest.
A little too honest. You don't have to try that hard to listen to us, I don't think.
No.
Yeah. All right, so let's do. So critical reflection is a deep, intentional, analytical process of examining our experiences, assumptions, and actions in practice.
What a good segue to a large vocab.
With a view to understanding and improving them, particularly in relation to power, ethics, and social justice. It was a definition. I feel like we needed a definition.
We need a definition, but in everyday practice language, what does it mean?
Well, that's up to you.
Well, I think we've said it. It means actually being able to reflect on your practice and in your practice.
Yeah.
And examining from many different perspectives what you as a social worker brought to practice, what you missed, and what was happening throughout the intervention or the communication.
Yeah.
And then how did your practice help promote the values of social work?
So I'm just going to remember that from now on, like you said, like it's a TV show. If someone was watching, what would they say?
Yeah.
Because I think that if you think about a practice scenario and you apply that lens to it, we're going to explore this by thinking about it's, you've been filmed for TV. I think that just is an easy way to understand what it is you're trying to pull out to understand the whole thing a little more.
Yeah. And you're watching oftentimes multiple characters in a TV show, unless it's, one of those Days of Our Lives or soap shows where someone stares into a window and talks to themselves. There's normally more than one person. It's about really examining each person in view.
Yeah. What's
happening for them? What are they feeling? What's going on?
Yeah.
What was the outcome? So you can not just focus on one thing, it's multi-dimensional. Let's focus on everyone that's part of this practice.
Yeah.
Or receiving social work.
So again, very much Kolb's experiential learning model.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do love a bit of Kolb.
Doesn't everyone?
I don't know.
Probably not, but that's my assumption.
No, I don't know.
Who doesn't love Kolb?
Well, is Kolb still it?
Well, I use him when I'm providing supervision with people, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
It's a great model.
I mean, I used it when I was for my doctorate research. Here I go talking about that again. It's been a few episodes.
Well,
I mean, that was one of the models I used.
I kind of think, of course you'd use him.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it was about supervision. Yeah. Made sense, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. But I think critical reflection, there's a strong link to supervision.
There has to be. Supervision has to be kind of like a vehicle for critical reflection. Good supervision.
Good quality supervision, yes.
Because supervision should be the place where your practice is explored in a safe environment where you learn.
And you feel uncomfortable, but it's not judgmental and it's not like you're working hard to understand what's going on. You're bringing your practice to dissect.
Yeah.
Cut up, examine, look at it from every angle and work out what do I do differently next time? What do I do exactly the same? And is there anything I need to actually repair with any of my clients or colleagues in the next couple of months?
Yeah. True. True. All right. So that's about critical reflection about your own practice and using supervision really as the vehicle to do that. But if you can't use supervision, it is about what you said before, having a critically reflective peer that you can bounce stuff from. So that's that informal supervision, really, in effect. And we talked about that when we did the supervision stuff. Using like getting informal supervision from either a manager or from your team or from a peer.
Yes.
And all of those things are valid and all of those things are important mechanisms for learning.
The knowing if they're important is if you're learning, not just having a chat with a friend.
Yeah, that's true. Because it can't just be a chat, though. It has to be an intentional conversation. And I think that's the difference between critically reflecting on your own practice and debriefing.
Yes, and they're very different, aren't they?
They're very different. Yeah, they're very, very different. And they should be very, very different. Because I think one of the things you have to do in critical reflection, which you do in good supervision, and you talk about this all the time, you probably already said it today and I missed it, but you're really trying to explore your own assumptions and biases and values and everything that you bring.
Yes. I had really good supervision with one of my managers, and I used to honestly feel like I was sitting in front of her naked.
Oh.
I couldn't hide. I know, terrible.
Yes.
Maybe we'll scrap that. But
let's not scrap that. That's great.
I feel like she was very skilled at being able to make me share even the most uncomfortable, like when I'd really, when you've stuffed up in practice, and sometimes it's really hard to admit that out loud. Like you can repair and fix it yourself and you can be reflexive, or you can come back later because you reflected on it after and go back. And there's just some things, for whatever reason, at certain points in your life or times, you actually don't want to always share, right, with your supervisor.
Yeah.
And I used to feel like, this is a better analogy, I was being interrogated by the FBI with the big spotlight on me. Like there was it was like I'd taken truth serum before I'd walk in the door, and I would just share in the last month all the shit that I needed to actually critically reflect on or unpack or use Kolb to, work out what was happening. And I used to I had this inner dialogue in my head, shut up, Rose, don't tell her that. Don't lead her down that path because she's got, but it was good supervision because I'd leave and I'd feel lighter. I'd had a plan. I knew what my next steps were. I also knew she had my back. She could say, you absolute idiot. What the hell have you done?
So you must have felt safe though. Because there must have been some element of safety there.
There was absolutely safety there, but still didn't feel comfortable. It just felt like, geez, I'm under this interrogation light and let me just bare my soul. But I learn a lot during that period.
Yeah, right.
So it's not comfortable. Critically reflecting on your own practice isn't comfortable.
No, it's not.
All the time.
No. Well, and it can't be. It can't be comfortable all the time. And I feel like it's okay if it's not comfortable. And you said this before. It's okay to have a conversation about practice that differs from somebody else's perception. Absolutely. Don't get your back up and don't call it bullying because it's probably not. Maybe it is bullying, but more than likely it's actually about critically reflecting on practice. I guess it's about the delivery.
Yeah, and I mean, not everyone has the best delivery all the time. That also is something that you just, our clients don't always have the best delivery. We don't,
Well, it's about the guy you talked about before. He didn't have the best delivery when he was starting to actually show his emotions. But for you named it and you kind of were able to move past it.
And I'm going to go to his house tomorrow and we're going to do some more work tomorrow. But if you think about it from a colleague, I sometimes wonder why it's easier to have ruptures with our clients and we're able to repair and move forward, and we don't often extend the same to our colleagues all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
And
that's true. I mean, is it because there's a different set of expectations to the relationship?
Possibly, but it shouldn't be the same skill level, right? You can, if you've been able to say to a carer, I'm really sorry for how I've just delivered that, and let's draw a line under it and start again. Why can't we do that to colleagues too?
I mean, I'm usually probably much more empathetic to clients than I am to my colleagues. I actually am.
Yeah. Probably I am too.
And I've often thought about that because that's probably not okay.
Probably not. We need to extend the same compassion, empathy
Yeah.
to everyone.
But I know that I'm not always like that. I know I have expectations that people... Actually, I remember someone saying to me, and could it be the same person maybe you're thinking about in terms of managers? Did we have the same manager at some stage?
Yeah.
And that it could be that. I'm pretty sure it was that manager who said to me, you can't... I don't know if it was or it wasn't, but you can't judge everyone by your own expectations. And I remember...
It's so true, isn't it?
Yeah. And I actually tried to remember that, but it's something I struggle with. Can we or should we move on to why information? Like why we should be critical about information?
Yeah.
There yet?
We're there. We've talked about reflection in action. We've talked about reflection on action.
Yeah.
And we've talked about the use of language and how it's not neutral.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess because one of the things that I think people are a little bit scared about is actually having an opinion about information and actually knowing that it's okay to be critical about something that you've read or some new policy or some new research project that comes out.
Or something you've listened to.
That's right. Yeah.
So we've come across some very recent research. It was actually a pilot study. So let's not even call it research as in the full stop. It was a pilot study that's been done in the Australian context, and it was looking at, caseworkers in child protection and their reasoning around parenting capacity and assessing that and the impact that then has on restoration. So we are using the word restoration. It's also known as reunification.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the workers' perspectives that influence either children being restored or not restored was kind of the core of this article.
Which is why we read it, because it's so relevant to our conversation, to our series.
Absolutely. Parenting capacity, restoration, hand in hand.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was Jodie read it first and sent me an email saying, have a look at this. And we both had very similar reactions. I couldn't even get through it the first time. It made me mad.
It made me really mad too. I was kind of disappointed as well, because I was thinking, and we're not going to name the research because it's not fair to name it, and it's
the outcomes of the pilot study.
Okay. We're not going to name the name of the publication. We're not going to give any of those details away, because it's just not fair to do that. But I guess the point of this conversation is the fact that it is so important to be critical about what it is that you are digesting. And just because something is published doesn't mean that
you take it wholly and you take that as this is now going to wholly inform my practice or my thinking around this area.
Yeah.
When you're reading any publication or listening to anything, you have to apply a critical lens to it.
Yeah.
And that means ask questions. And I guess my bugbear around saying the research is because I can't tell you how many times when I was in a statutory agency, a specialist or someone in a program area that wasn't a direct practitioner would say, the research says, and they'd spout off these lines about whatever the latest research said. And when I would say, and I would always say it, who authored it, what's it called, because I'd like to read it, it was always very opaque.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to talk about the research, name it. If you're offering advice to practitioners is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying, even this, I can see someone standing up next month saying to a whole group of practitioners, well, the current research says da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. Which is why it made me so angry, and I think it's why it made you so angry, because it's basically saying that caseworkers, and it wasn't just statutory caseworkers, it was caseworkers who work in the out-of-home care or child protection system in New South Wales, are really shit at their job. Basically, That's what it was saying. And it was such a strong bias towards negative practice.
Negative practice. And it sets the context starts as an Australia-wide context,
Yeah.
but then obviously it just narrows into New South Wales.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that made me really angry about about the article is the fact that it just kind of started off by this glowing reference to the fact that New South Wales has kind of aligned policy in the practice of permanency by, having these permanency guidelines and how amazing that is. And it is really good. Like, it's fine to do that. But as we've said before, you can't come up with a policy or a legislative change and then try and make the practice fit it. Because it doesn't work that way. And what we've seen in this article and in other things is that the practice is clearly not working that way, because you can't just one day decide we're going to do things differently in this system and we're going to do it this way now. Children are going to be restored no matter what. Children are not going to be removed no matter what. This is the way we're working now. And you can't then just put a label on that as saying this is best practice guidance for permanency without actually having something to back that up.
Yeah.
And then everyone that doesn't work that way or doesn't jump on board with that argument is now classified as being a really terrible practitioner. That's actually just not fair. It's not fair when, I'm on a rant now. When we know, if you've been around the field, the child and family field in New South Wales for any given time, you know that permanency guidelines were brought in to save the state money. They weren't brought in for any other reason than the fact that out-of-home care was just too expensive and it was unsustainable.
Yep.
So why not just say that? That argument was talked about 10, 15 years ago, and then suddenly it's not talked about anymore. Instead, in its place, this misinformation, really, about permanency guidelines and that children need to remain with their families of origin no matter what the cost is.
And I think part of how this article supports that is it gives statistics across Australia, and it names New South Wales as having the highest number of entries into care. And if you're reading this paper and you're not from Australia or even New South Wales, you might not know that New South Wales population is the highest of any state or territory in Australia.
Yeah.
Closely, 1 million less is kind of Victoria, and Queensland is about 2 million less than New South Wales. But the other states and territories, some of them we're talking hundreds of thousands. We're not even in the millions. So on one hand, I've heard very high up people in statutory child protection New South Wales boast about New South Wales being the biggest statutory child protection system in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah. The largest, the biggest, the most, the most volume. But then when it suits, we're going to say New South Wales has the highest number of entries into care of any state. Just look at the population.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then a figure's given. And I'm not great at math, but I've Googled it to make sure my math is correct. And it's 3.5% across Australia of the number of children reported to child protection agencies in the year that this stats are from. 3.5% versus the thousands that they put on the paper. It just changes, I guess, the feel when you read that this many thousands of kids have been brought into care in this period.
Yeah.
When you then look at the actual numbers of how many children were reported to Australian child protection agencies in that same time period, we're talking almost 300,000 children and young people were notified.
Yeah.
That is significant, but this article doesn't talk about that.
No, it's really concerning the way the information is portrayed. It really is portrayed, I think, to fit the narrative. And I think the narrative is that workers are doing a terrible job and they're not meeting the organisational priority, which is to keep children out of care.
Yeah, or to restore them as soon as possible.
Which is about keeping children out of care.
Yes.
And you've got to ask yourself again, why is that the organisational priority? Why is that the priority? And don't give me this rhetoric bullshit about, well, because it's best for children. Of course it's best for children if it's a safe environment. How do we know it's a safe environment?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I said straight away to you after I read it, why does no one talk in the research about the children that are constantly reported to Child Protection Services and they either have no intervention or they have an intervention that doesn't include removal and then the matter is closed. No one talks about their trajectory or their outcomes in education, in health, in future relationships. I don't see that information being sprouted about the impact and effects when child protection agencies actually don't intervene for children and young people. No one talks about that. So you can't compare the outcomes for children and young people in out-of-home care, and there are some positive outcomes and there are some disastrously negative outcomes.
Absolutely.
It is not always just negative, but that's what we talk about and we read about. But no one talks about or shows me or explains what happens when actually we don't intervene. What are those outcomes for those children and young people and those families? What does that look like? I have no idea.
Well, and we've all seen.
We have clients that were often reported that come in as adults that never had an intervention, and you can see the impact of them, their daily functioning, can't you? Of their trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. And how things could have been actually different for them. And you know how unfair it is. How unfair it is that system let them down in the way that it did. So we're certainly not advocates for removal. We're certainly not advocates for removal. I'm an advocate for actually being honest and being truthful around the drivers for the system in terms of why we need to practice in the way that we practice. I just want some honesty there.
Absolutely. And I think this article also talked about, it talks about caseworkers not being confident in assessing risk, parental capacity for restoration, and then the outcomes around should a legal option for a child be changed. But it does it in a way that makes it so simple, doesn't it? It's so simplistic. We don't talk about the system issues, and I'm talking about multiple system issues across mental health, drug and alcohol, child protection, education. Homelessness. We don't talk about it. This doesn't talk about those issues. It just talks about caseworkers' lack of skill in assessing parenting capacity and knowing how to change a legal order for a child or how to support it.
And I am bringing my own personal experience into my feelings about this because I've been there. I've been a worker on that frontline field, and I know how hard that job is. And I just think if I was a worker and I was now reading this research, the outcome of a pilot study that is in this very reputable journal, I would be mortified. I would feel so disempowered, and I would probably be really upset that this is the way that my practice is being narrated. I'd be really upset about that.
I would too. And if, like myself, the first time I had a look, I couldn't get through it. I didn't read to the end where it talks about the sample size was limited and there's a potential for selection bias because they relied on convenience, or that due to time and resourcing constraints, there wasn't a great deal of post-sorting interviewing, utilizing a different system. Like if you didn't read those small bits that are peppered towards the end, you would actually think this is research and this is, because it's published, that your work is terrible.
It's just not fair. I just find it really irritating. It makes me really angry, and I guess it's why I probably can't work for organizations, because I just do not agree that we have to push the organizational agenda above the costs of everything.
No, because we should be pushing child safety. And enhancing parenting capacity to meet the needs of children now and in the future. That should be the push.
It should be the push. And the push should also be, instead of bashing workers who are actually probably trying to do the best job they can do given the constraints on their resources, we should be trying to actually push how can they do their job differently.
Talk about parenting capacity assessments in this study. Talk about how we can enhance skill around that, or come up with a resource that actually would help work with parents across Australia to enhance their parenting capacity and wrap around once child protection leaves their lives or before they get involved. Talk about how we resource things differently to actually make a difference.
Yeah. It's really, really, really disheartening. That's all I can say about that article.
It's disheartening, but I think the takeaway for me is if you read research or articles and you agree with it, still be critical. Still go and ask some questions. And if you can't get through it and it made you mad, like this one made us mad, take some time to go back and kind of reread it and then think what's missing from this and do your own research. We did. We went and looked up. I went back to the AIHW. I looked up statistics. I looked up, even the how many substantiations. That's not a word that we use in New South Wales. There's no nice, easy way to go, we've assessed this home and here's what we substantiated. That's very old language and it doesn't fit, the current suite of tools. Well, at least it didn't when I was there. So have some critical lens around what you're reading and what's missing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know that information and language isn't neutral.
No, we do. And if you think about the articles you're reading, the books you're reading in relation to social work practice, they all come with a particular perspective and often, of course, because it's humans writing it, inherent biases and assumptions. And so when you're critically reflecting, you need to think about what's not been said or the way in which something is framed.
Yes. Or why. I think thinking about a particular piece of research, why is that research saying what it's saying? What is the purpose of that research? And do you know why I say that? Because I also think when DCJ the Child Protection Agency were bringing in all of their new kind of suite of changes, and particularly when they're bringing in their structured decision-making tools, and there was this whole big rhetoric about, there's lots of research that backs that up. Because I looked at that as part of my doctoral research. I've got to stop saying that. But I looked at all of that at the time, and what struck me was the fact that the research that people were relying on to justify bringing all these tools in was research that was actually done by the organisation who developed the tools. You know what I mean? And you've got to look at that and you've got to consider what that then means.
Yes. And I think you've said that to me many times. I know there's a different practice that I am quite interested in, and you've said to me, but where's all that research coming from? And it's coming from the foundation who created this, It's not come from anywhere else. So you always say to me, but find a piece of research, find an article that actually that is independent of these people before you look at it. And it's very true. And I think add in the neoliberal context that we're in.
Yeah.
And I remember being questioned on the stand a few times and, very clever solicitors would bring up, here's this research and literature. Have you read this? Are you across this? Or I was dumb enough on occasions to even use it in my own affidavit. And I've been asked many times on the stand, well, could I find an article that is in direct opposition to this? And I'd have to say, absolutely. You absolutely could. If you looked, you will always find something that is saying the opposite or something very different.
Yeah.
And our job as social workers is to understand what we've read and then be critical about what was missing, what wasn't said, or how are things projected or positioned to make them seem one way or another.
Or if this fits so nicely with me, if I read this and I think, wow, that's like a light bulb going off, why is that the case?
Yes.
Why does this fit with me? Is it because it's this amazing piece of research that's just going to direct my practice from forever? Or is it because it's comfortable?
Yeah, and our values must align or our perspectives align, or it's giving weight to something I've been saying for a few months now. So I'm right and they're right. Let's use it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree. Because part of using information, I think, is to always to build that evidence base. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also about, which I think you just said, it is about definitely challenging that dominant narrative. And knowing that you can.
You can.
Yeah.
Well, we certainly can here in Australia today. Can't we?
We can. Absolutely, yeah. I guess some countries don't have the luxury of being able to challenge dominant narratives. That's true.
It's very true right now across the world in many places.
Yeah.
And even having the space to, create a podcast where we can just share our views. And some of you will be like, I don't agree. Absolutely fine with that. Some of you will absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Love that. But
Yeah.
it's about then going away and thinking about even this podcast critically. What did we miss? What was our, values that we brought to it?
Yeah, because I've sprouted off a lot of my own opinions and behaviours already. And, we would love to hear if you disagree. God, honestly, just tell us. That's amazing, because that says to me, and I think I've said this before, that shows me that you're thinking about what we're saying.
Yes. And like you said earlier, it's about that shared learning.
Yeah.
And we can learn from difference of opinions, different values, different beliefs. There's a lot of learning that can occur in that space.
Yeah. Oh, completely. And I one of the things I've always enjoyed is when people kind of say, I don't know if I agree with this, but I like this little bit of what you said. But have you thought about it in this way?
Yes.
So many times I've thought, wow, no, I haven't.
Yep. And I think our student Jess, she was talking to me about a particular psychologist who was talking about education and how the outcome of education is what we often celebrate, so knowing new things. But the particular psychologist whose name escapes me right now, that she kind of really likes and reads a lot of her work, is about the learning space is actually when the knowledge is getting shared and there's uncomfortableness and there's moments of, pause where you have to think about it. Like, that's where the learning space is. It isn't the outcome. And so being uncomfortable with listening to this podcast or other podcasts is good, because it's like that's when you're in the learning space.
Do you mean that's when you're finding spaces of consciousness raising?
That's not how I would articulate that, no.
But I think that's what that person was referring to. But yeah.
Well,
I mean, I like the way you said it.
Plainer.
I like the way you said it so much more. All right. So how do you critically reflect on information? Let's just kind of go through a little bit of a checklist.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a checklist.
All right. So the first thing we've said is you consider the source.
Yeah. So who created this information?
Yeah.
And where do they come from? Are they aligned with an organization, a university? Has the government paid them a shitload of money to write this?
Yeah.
What is their role? What is their background? And what is their potential agenda?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are their biases, their perspectives, and are they reliable and credible?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And just because maybe they're not someone who has this huge funded paper or research project.
Well, lots of letters after their name.
Yeah, maybe it is someone who's just kind of writing something that is like maybe a blog or is less kind of opinion piece. Doesn't mean it's not credible, but I guess it's about thinking about what it is that this person is saying. Where are you getting your information from, and what does it mean?
What does it mean?
What does it mean?
And is something missing from what's been said?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Which I guess brings us to the next kind of little tick, which would be around examining the content.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really thinking about what actually is being stated quite explicitly. So what are they saying? What is implied or assumed? And I'm actually quite bad, I think. I'm going to use the word bad because I can't think of another word, at just assuming people can pick up on the stuff that I'm not writing when I write reports.
Yeah, that's a terrible assumption to have.
Terrible assumption. So I know that I have to get better at that, because I guess I just have this assumption or this implied. I constantly have implied messages in the reports that I'm writing. And I try very hard not to.
Yeah.
Thinking about what's missing, which you've talked about a lot, Rose, and like our own little bugbear, how is the language being used? What's the purpose of the language that's actually being used in the documentation?
Documentation, yeah.
All right. The third point.
Reflect on your own response. So what you've just read or heard, how does it make you feel? Does it like bit of confirmation bias, or is it, oh, now I have language to articulate what I was seeing in practice or doing or feeling?
Yeah.
Or does it challenge my existing beliefs, and does it really make me like want to turn off and say, what the hell's going on here? Why am I so dumb? Why can't I understand this?
Yeah, that's true.
What biases or assumptions do I bring when I'm reading a particular piece of writing or listening to something?
Yeah.
And am I allowing my personal experiences or previous cases to overly influence my understanding? I do that often. For this one time,
So
in 2003, this happened. Like,
that's right.
let it go, Rose.
Yeah.
And how does this information align or conflict with my professional values and my ethical principles?
Yeah. So I guess it's always about considering the context
Yeah.
and considering the impact. And not just the impact on you, but the impact on others, which is that TV thing again. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know I'm going to give this a stab at trying to articulate this. I really enjoy reading articles and journals and books where it helps me as a practitioner.
Yeah.
And there's a benefit to the child or the young person, the family or the individual. When it's about something that's going to change or enrich someone's life or make a situation a little bit different in a positive way, and I can use a skill or an intervention that's really going to promote healing for someone or just assist in a positive trajectory in their life, I know that they're the types of books and articles I generally read.
Yeah.
I struggle when it's articles and journals about, the neoliberal context or where it's about tying funding into particular practices. I know that I find it really difficult to stay in when someone's agenda pushing and I feel like I'm being propaganded all over.
Yeah.
Like I need to get better at being able to stay in the moment, finish the articles and then apply a critical lens as opposed to just dismissing it because it's been pushed by a particular company or government or whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think I'm exactly the same. And I think, I think it's always easier to read and understand something when it's kind of like a narrative, when it's a story. And particularly if it's a story where you can relate to, which I think is why people really like our practice stories.
Yes.
For the same reason, because I think they can then relate and it's this kind of, this shared learning experience that seems real and grounded.
Yes. Whereas it's great to have a wide range of different articles and podcasts to listen to.
Yeah. But
part of the critical reflection is actually, for me, challenging myself to read something that might not align with my practices or I think has been shaped or promoted for a particular outcome that maybe doesn't align with the way in which we work or our clients.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The ones that want you to do more with less and pretty up outcomes for clients based on some research, which actually we all know is bullshit.
So you actually do mean just propaganda.
Yeah.
You said the word before, but propaganda.
Yeah.
You just mean you don't like reading propaganda.
I hate it.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
We just did this assessment together and we came out of an assessment interview and you were like, what did you think? And I gave you this whole monologue of alleged thoughts and you were just stunned silent.
Yeah.
And I could feel you thinking, what is wrong with you?
That's right.
And I was trying really hard to bring a different perspective and wonder what we'd missed because I'd made an assumption we were thinking the same thing, but I wanted to also test it, but test it in a way where you were just maybe going to fire back with me with and this and this and this and this. And instead you were just stunned silent and I'm driving in front of you and I can see in the revision mirror you're just staring out the windscreen what's the actual... So when I was trying to be
what I was thinking.
Critical and trying to play, I guess they call it devil's advocate, to be like, what am I missing? You were not having a bar of it.
I remember that too because I was thinking to myself, what is going on here? What has happened? And were we in the same place just then or were we in different places?
And I thought, should I preface this with I'm going to play devil's advocate? But I didn't. I just launched it and then then I switched back to my normal here's what I'm thinking, blah, blah, blah. And you were like, oh, I heard this oh.
I was like, thank God Rose is back. Thank God Rose is back.
I was just trying to be a little bit different, but it didn't work because it wasn't comfortable for either of us. And what was I was like, what was the point of that?
I don't know. No, but I should have
indulged me.
I should have indulged you because really we're just spent an hour talking to people about how you need to have that you need to be critical and have all these different thoughts. And it's great to have a critical friend. And I wasn't your critical friend.
No, you weren't. But what did come from that, you were like, and this, and this, and this, and this. And you're like, are you writing this down? Are we going to remember this? And then we fed off each other and actually got very critical whilst we had the same probably analysis starting. We were able to get a much deeper analysis because we started then bouncing off, and I missed this, and you were like, what about this? And I was like, oh my God, I missed this, and then this, and then this. And then one other visit we went to, there was something that happened early on, and I was like, it confirmed the analysis that we'd started to build.
Yeah, that's true.
So we were able to be critical. It just wasn't in the way that I thought was going to be a bit fun by completely changing and pretending or structuring my thoughts in a different position where you were just like, what?
Just give me pre-warning next time. Just tell me what you're doing, because then I'll be like, all right, I get it. I get it. I get what's happening here. I get what's she hasn't lost it.
I was just trying to, test some biases and some assumptions without forewarning you.
I know, Jesus. I do. I can't imagine what my face looked like. Inside, I was like, what is happening?
You were like, I want to throw a firebomb at that car that she's in.
I was like, all right, am I going to just have to write this myself? What's happening here?
It was an epic fail on my behalf to try and be critical in a different way.
All right, so I was so glad when you came back. That's all I can say. All right. I feel like we're done. I feel like we've talked about critical reflection. So we've talked about it in practice in terms of reflecting in and on your own practice and how you do that. But we've also talked about it in terms of the fact that it's okay to be critical about information, and you actually should be critical about information, because not all information is going to be your friend.
Correct. And not all language is neutral either. Like information isn't neutral.
We've had some rants about language.
And I think Jodie said it earlier on, it's possibly more about your delivery and you said it really well. I really like this bit, but I'm struggling with this piece of the information. That might be a much nicer way to challenge someone's words or thoughts about social work practice, as opposed to, being just very blunt and actually dismissive or even rude. So it's about the delivery of, help me understand this, or I'm struggling with this aspect, but I really can resonate with this.
So I just thought, if anyone's listening to this who I have managed in the past and I've probably been blunt and rude, I'm very sorry.
And she'd probably be blunt and rude again, let's be honest.
I apologise for my past behaviour. I will try better to make sure that I take my own advice next time.
See, continuous improvement.
That's right.
We're all striving for that.
All right. Do you want me to do this bit?
Sure.
This wraps up another episode of Relational Practice, a social work podcast. We really hope that this has been useful, kind of enjoyable maybe, but helpful. To ensure you don't miss future discussions relevant to your practice, including our next fortnight's episode on ambiguous loss.
Can't wait for that. We've actually got someone joining us.
We've got a special guest.
An expert.
Like a true expert. So we're not gonna name who it is now. No, we'll put that out in social media posts leading up to it. All right, so please hit the subscribe, follow buttons wherever you can. We are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube. Anywhere else?
No, that's enough.
Yeah, that's all we can manage. Honestly, we are two old women trying to sort this out. All right.
All right, until then, stay safe and continue to practice relationally.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
But maybe